Okay. So I had my talk changed at the very last minute. So if you're not here to listen to Blue Team Security, the door's right over there. No one's running out the door. Shit. This place is way bigger than I thought it was going to be, so no pressure. My name is Siren. I flew all the way here from Sweden to hang out with you guys. I'm the head of security for a medical company, a digital medical company that puts you in contact with a doctor through an app. So we take security rather seriously, given that we have patient journals. So I work a lot. I have a bunch of certs. They're really boring. If you care deeply about them, you can ask me later. In essence, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. I run a security group in the southern part of Sweden. So if you're ever in Sweden and want to learn more about security, come hang out with us. We have free beer and free pizza. And that's it. It's free beer, free pizza, and tea, because I don't drink beer. You can follow me at Twitter at SecurityPony. I don't tweet a lot, but I tend to answer questions. So if you have questions after this, you can talk to me. And my superpower is that I get lost. I get lost a lot, and everyone needs a superpower, so that is mine. I get lost super easily. Today, we're doing Blue Team Security, which is defense, which is what I do. So if you were expecting a talk where I was going to stand here and madly hack away at a system showing you a vulnerability, I am so sorry to disappoint you. That's not what I do. I do defense, which is way cooler. So yeah, I'm going to convince you of this. Whenever we talk about defensive security, I hear the quote a lot, Rome wasn't built in a day, so chill. You can't possibly build that system immediately because Rome wasn't built in a day, and it needs to be slow, and you want a big bang approach. So calm down, because it takes time, and you need to kind of calm down. I hear this a lot. So we're going to have a little bit of a history lesson here, because I like stories. This is Emperor Nero. He ruled in Rome a very, very long time ago. He ruled for 13 years in Rome. And he was ruling Rome during the time of the Great Fire. Has everyone heard of the Great Roman Fire? Rome burned. What most people don't realize during this quote is that Rome wasn't built in a day, but it burned in one, is the end of that quote. So Emperor Nero ruled when Rome burned, and Rome actually burned for 6 days. But Emperor Nero gets blamed for this. And I think about Emperor Nero a lot, because he didn't build Rome all by himself. It wasn't him. Rome had existed before his time, and it kind of existed after his time. But there he was, and he gets blamed for Rome burning down. And there are a lot of different reasons that Rome burned. Some people think he burned it intentionally. Some people think he actually lit it on fire while he was playing a lute and just kind of watching it burn. And other people think he was actually trying to stop the fire. But he was in charge. Rome burned to a bloody crisp, and he got blamed, despite the fact that it wasn't actually his fault. So remember that. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it burned in one. Bringing me to my next most often heard quote, we can't predict everything, and I get this one a lot. So I'll bring up a risk when we're trying to build defense, and it's, when is that going to happen? Tell me, is it going to happen tomorrow, in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? How do we prepare for this risk that you've discovered? You're waving your arms, you look really scared. How do we prepare for that particular risk? And I give them a number, I give my best estimate, and then they say, how do you know? And I give them some more facts, and they say, but we can't predict everything, you're probably wrong. And they'll bring up some horrifying disaster like this one. This is 9/11. And they'll say, we can't possibly predict horrible disasters. We can't predict when the next attack is coming. We can't predict earthquakes. We can only take into account what happens today. And this becomes a big problem when I'm trying to build proactive security. I want to protect from the next attack, and it's not really great to protect from the next attack if it's already happened. Puts me in kind of a bind. So I'd like to talk, this is my second story. I'm only telling 2 stories today, so this is the second one. This is Rick Rollascoli. He is a physical security engineer. He worked for Morgan Stanley in the States, came from the UK military, joined the American military, and he did security. And so he has a very, very interesting story. So he worked around the World Trade Center when the Pan Am bombing happened in 1988. Pan Am Flight 103 blew up in Scotland. was a terrorist attack on the plane. And he looked at that, and he worked around the World Trade Center at that time, and he went, this is going to be a problem for me. Plane blows up in Scotland. He works out around the World Trade Center, and he goes, aha, this is going to be me. So he hires another physical engineer, or he consults with another physical engineer, a man named Hill. And in 1990, they wrote a physical security report around the World Trade Center. And they turned it in to their bosses. And they worked at Morgan Stanley. They worked around the World Trade Center. And their bosses read it, and they kind of went, this is interesting. Okay, put it down. 1993, crazy dude drives a truck into the bottom of the World Trade Center, blows up a couple supporting beams there. A couple of people die, very, very sad. And Morgan Stanley dusts off the report, opens the report, reads it this time, and realized in the report they'd pointed out that the bottom of the World Trade Center was highly insecure, and they went, shit, dude has a point. So he earned some pretty good cred at that point. And so he's talking to his bosses, and he said, we're still a target. We've secured the bottom of the World Trade Center. Shit's much, much better. I think it's a plane. They're going to come for us with a plane. And his bosses went, you were right last time. We should probably listen. So they looked at their lease, and they realized they couldn't get out of the lease until 2016. They were stuck in the World Trade Center. He wanted them to go to New Jersey, but they're stuck in the World Trade Center. And so they go, okay, every 3 months, every single person at our company is going to have mandatory evacuation. Every single person. We're going to stand up and we're going to get out. Every 3 months, from the CEO down. And they did. Now this is the great part. So first plane smashes in the World Trade Center, and over the PA, the information that the people in the World Trade Center get is, stay at your desks, stay calm. And Berlusconi jumps up on the desks, grabs his mic, and goes, get up, get out. And every single person at Morgan Stanley, every 3 months, they stand up, they get their buddy, and they get out. And every single person at Morgan Stanley lived. Rick Berlusconi was last seen on the 10th floor going back up. He saved 2,700 people that day. And he died. He called his wife on the way up, and he said she was the love of his life, and that he was, please go on, please be happy. And he went up, he was looking for the next company to get them out. And unfortunately, he died. And I think about that a lot, because 1990, he knew it was coming. And so I go back to that quote, we can't predict everything. So this is my spot at work, this is my whiteboard. He is on my whiteboard every single morning, and I look at him every single morning, and I make everybody that comes into my office look at him every single morning. This is my lovely Kanban. And so I work defensive security, and I meet this a lot. That's never going to happen, and I think at least I don't have to go to my boss and say they're coming for us in a plane, because I don't have the strength to do that. I don't know how I could make that argument. I don't have to worry about planes, because I work on the second floor, so it's very short. And I just think about the strength of that person to get his boss to believe that they're coming for us in a plane in 1993, and they didn't hit till 2001. But every 3 months, out the door, out the door, out the door, out the door. And that is super impressive. So I want you to kind of keep it in mind as we go through this talk. I do a lot of talks about defensive security, and I hear this a lot from developers, and they go, that could never possibly happen. It's never that bad. No one could possibly be that stupid. I personally would never do that. And I love that I personally would never do that, because that means that they are the developer that works with no external code libraries, has no external dependencies, their code never touches anything else, and they work in a complete isolated bubble. And I have never met that developer. So your code may be perfect. I doubt it, but for the sake of argument, let's say that you are that person. You're a genius. You're amazing. You work with other people who are, for the sake of my argument, lesser mortals. So you have to take their failings into account. It's sad, but it's a fact of life. And so then we're stuck with, all right, I have lesser mortals to deal with because you are that shining beacon of hope. And unfortunately, we make mistakes, and we make them over and over and over again. And one of the greatest shocks of my life was I started my career as a pen tester. I started attacking systems. And when I was young and naive, I thought, I'm going to start finding new bugs. I have found, OWASP's top 10 a million times. Now I'm going to find the new bug. I'm going to do it. It's going to be new and amazing. And I've been doing this for many, 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 many years now. And I still find the exact same bugs. I still find SQL injection. I still find cross-site scripting. I still find configuration errors. I still find session errors. It's still happening. So despite your utopian state of your amazing code that touches nothing, you're stuck working with lesser mortars that apparently can't read. And, well, they can't. And they can't learn from their mistakes because I am finding the exact same bugs now that I did 10 years ago, that I did 15 years ago, because I started playing with stuff when I was 14, 15, so I've been doing this for a while. And we're still making these exact same mistakes, and I guarantee that these big hacks that we've seen that are big and scary and they're on the news, I promise, if you really put a gun to that CEO's head or a gun to that, CSO's head and said, what was the root cause of this? I can guarantee that it's going to be SQL injection, cross-site scripting, or a validation bug, or that they don't have control of their accounts. It's going to be one of those four. And that is not a sexy headline. That is not a sexy headline to say, we've known about this issue for 30 years and our developers have not improved. That is not nearly as much fun as super hacker takes over blah, 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 blah with megabomb. I don't know. If you find a hack, you get to name it, and it's always something super cool. So it's going to be megabomb. I don't know. So, oops, there we go. And then as security becomes more popular, more sexy, more fun to write about, more and more companies get hacked by the exact same bugs over and over and over and over again. Over and over and over and over again. We keep making the same mistakes despite our utopian state, despite our perfect code, and we're still kind of tripping over the low-hanging fruit. And then we go to security conferences, and it's some person in some pre-configured environment hacking away, showing some super exploit that in absolutely and utterly no way reflects the reality of your particular product. You don't work with mobile. You don't work with that database. You don't work with, pick your poison. And so the hack that you're seeing doesn't actually affect you. So you sit at that talk and you go, that person is great at their job. I would never do that. And then you leave. And that is your lesson, that person is great. I am amazing. I will go home. And so we're talking about the fact that things keep happening over and over and over again, but where is security rising to meet that challenge? And I would say we're not, and that is something that we in the security community, they're not here, but I'm just going to take ownership for them, that we need to be doing a better job. We need to be selling defensive security, and we need to be doing it now, and we should have been doing it since the beginning, because this is way cooler. I've done both ends, and this is the cooler end. So if I could just convince that dude right over there who said, yeah, I said I was going to pick on you, dude over there, that security isn't his thing, you're wrong. It's the cooler end. So I'm gonna change your mind, dude over there. So this is a talk about the reality of security work, not I'm hacking away at a pre-configured environment. Here we have the beautiful front end. Any front end developers here? Hand up. Wow, we're mostly back end here, or mobile. Wow, that's cool. So the front end is going to work with the back end. And for some reason, there's a security problem between this and this. I don't see it personally, and I love back-end developers. My heart will always be back-end, and every single back-ender ever always says my back-end doesn't look anything like that. And it's true. I mean, if you look at this back-end, there's technically a house that you could probably live in. And if you just focus on that teeny tiny room there at the top, I mean, there's a roof, there's a door, there's a window. It's functional. We're going to be fine. So it's definitely, it's kind of a, you're looking at this and you're like, this is amazing. We don't need new security work. And this is what most people see. So we're fine, right? And then we're looking at this and we're like, all right, it's such a disaster. I don't know where I could possibly start with this because Jesus Christ, it's a ruin. And most security, this is what I'm presented with. Fix it. These are your resources. They're standing here next to you. I will give you $10. You have 10 minutes. Are you done? And I'm like, damn it. No. And then most developers, when we started a new company, unless you're the person that's built the entire back end yourself, you're usually brought into an environment where you didn't build most of it. And so if it looks like this, where can you possibly start to actually make an effective change to improve the security of this? I mean, if I came into that and I was a developer, I'd be like, shit, I'm out of here. But I need to eat and I need to pay rent because I don't want to live in a tent. So I'm just going to keep, I don't know, I'll add a log somewhere. And I'll just say, that's good. That'll be me. I'll just add a log and just hope for the best. Some tape, I don't know, more screws. We're going to be fine. And then I'm just going to hope that nobody notices because everybody's looking at this. At this point at the talk, this is usually where people are like, we're done. I'm doomed. I clearly should have gone to the talk over there. This is way too depressing. Or I was expecting something else. So if anyone needs to go, I totally understand. But as I promised dude over there, this is a talk about hope. And this amazing graphic that I found last night that totally perked this slide up because it was getting a bit dark. This is the reality of working blue team security. You will never be overfunded. I've been doing this for a long time, and I have never, ever, ever been in the situation where I'm like, what could I possibly spend my money on? I have oceans. I have never been in the situation where I've been like, I have nothing to do. It's never going to happen. I will never be done. And this is actually what makes me love my job so much. It is the absolute best job I've ever had. I have never had a job that is more rewarding. It is the most difficult job that you will ever have. And it is the best. And it is amazing. And I am telling you that it is so resource poor right now that if you write security on your CV, you will be hounded to death by recruiters. Seriously. And the best part is, it's not particularly hard. Shh, it's a secret. But it's not particularly hard. Most people look at the dude banging away at the pre-configured environment and they think that is security work, and it is absolutely not. Most security work, the real security work, is hygiene. It is trying to protect us from whatever it is, and we have to do it immediately because it is coming. I'm also kind of afraid of clowns. Haven't seen the movie yet, but I will. And we have to figure out what it is and defend against it, and that is really, really difficult if we have to protect our entire castle. We have to find every single hole, and we have to protect all of them. And we're there by ourselves with my invisible pile of money, my giant team of me, and oh God, I have 10 minutes. So where do I start? Honestly, this is the most important slide you're going to get from me. Honestly, validate your inputs. You will kill 98% of the attacks out there. I swear to you, I swear on my life, if you do this, you'll get rid of almost all the security problems you will have. Not all of them. Absolutely not all of them. But you will kill so many of them, you will be making an effective change. And it's a really boring thing to do. And I hate that it's true, but it is. So just validate your inputs. Just do it. Full stop. The reason most people don't is because this is who we think our attacker is. It's Hacker Man. If you haven't seen King Fury do it, it's hilarious. They think that we need to be protecting from, super hacker. Edward Snowden, the super hacker. I don't even know all of them, but there's some scary, talented people out there. I'm not one of them, but they're scary, talented. And honestly, that's not who your most likely threat is. It is this dude. He has just downloaded the latest hacker bot. He is, using denial of service bot like Hammer that he can literally rent from Amazon Cloud. And he doesn't know how to do anything, and he can't get past the validation on your front end. So as long as you can just kind of kill the 98% of, I'm just going to call them peons, you're making an effective difference. If we're looking at, in France a couple years ago, 1 million zillion sites were defaced. Every single one of it was due to the fact that they didn't validate their inputs. Every single one. They could just switch out the picture. They had a new picture on there. Validation would have solved that entire problem. Boring problem to solve. Would have solved the actual attack. So this is not the enemy. And honestly, neither is this. This is. The most likely threat we face is unfortunately bad code. And I would argue that there are no bad developers. There are developers in bad situations that are understaffed, underfunded, and uninspired, and I do mean uninspired, so I'm trying to make that change here, by Blue Team and Defensive Security. They don't know where to start, and they're looking at that back end of the ruinous house, and they're thinking, what could I possibly do? What could I possibly do to make this, turd fire of a situation even slightly better? And in that situation, I don't know if, without my security knowledge, if I would be any better. And then I meet front-enders, and they're like, yeah, front-end security is stupid, because they'll get around it right away. And I'm like, yes. And if you're looking at Edward Snowden, yes, probably. But 98% of what's out there isn't Edward Snowden, thank God. Edward Snowden's a great guy, but you're trying to get rid of, validation attacks. You're trying to get rid of bots. You're not trying to get rid of a mega hacker, because if a mega hacker is coming for you, there's nothing you can do, honestly. It's a matter of time before that person gets in. So it's just kind of, me to you, we're done. So what I'm actually talking about is risk. So we're trying to figure out what is the riskiest thing that could possibly happen. What is where can I make the best impact? Where can I solve, where do I get, to use a buzzword which I truly hate, the most bang for my buck? And I feel a little sick saying it because it's all buzzwordy, but bosses like to hear bang for buck. So we're talking about risk. So we're looking at 3 possible things that we want to kind of meld together into one giant thing, and it's impact, possibility, and ease of exploitation. And I stole this image from Google. I didn't make it myself because I make shitty slides, so I stole this one right from Google. And what I'm talking about with impact is how bad is it possibly going to be? How bad? If I steal your entire database, how bad is that going to be? And if you can answer the question, it's encrypted with AES 256, super encrypted, we have good key management. Bad? Yeah. Worst case scenario, you'll have a little PR thing. Your PR person will trot out and be like, yep, it's super encrypted. If they have a server hall in 500 years, they'll find your personal information, but they don't. So we're good. Not super bad. If your database is in clear text, you're going to have a bad day, and I'm sorry, don't do that. So possibility, and this is the one where people tend to get tripped up because we think in terms of it won't happen to me. It could never possibly happen to me. Or we don't have anything of interest. And this is the one that drives me nuts because every single website, every single app has something of interest in its reputation. Phishing is still one of the most lucrative things you can do on the internet. If I can take your website and phish people's information through it, I will be making money. So even if your website is puppies.com or look at my amazing kittens or I don't even know, think of a website that contains nothing of interest, you have a reputation as a trusted website and you will be a target. Probably not from an Edward Snowden type, but from someone trying to phish information, phish your certificates, use you for spam, whatever the case may be, they will use your reputation to make money. So you're absolutely a target. Sounds dark, doesn't it? Ease of exploitation. This is where people that don't have a lot of security work get tripped up because they're like, I personally would find that extremely difficult. And thank God that they think that, because then no one would be hacking ever. Unfortunately, you can't think from yourself. You have to look at what are the techniques being used right now and what's actually happening around the world right now. And to your help, you have companies like SANS or foundations like SANS and OWASP and CVSS that actually do statistical analysis every single year of the types of attacks that are happening. So you can actually measure how often this particular attack is being used and give yourself kind of a between finger and thumb, how likely is this to actually happen, to give you a better idea of the risk that particular attack can do or can happen. So where you start your security work is always with a threat model. If no one else has seen this is a threat model. You're looking at drawing out your entire application and trying to figure out where you're going to screw it up. And this is always hard, especially if you've been the person that's built it from the very, very beginning, because it's kicking a baby. So you draw your application and you draw your threat vectors, and those are the little lines there in red. And it's where you're talking to an untrusted source, someone not you. Somewhere that a user can interact, that a service can interact and send you something nasty. And that's where you want to start. And you can break this down to a service level. So I've broken this down to tampering by the process. So you can actually take this down to, the frankly, the subatomic level. I wouldn't recommend it if you're just starting out, but you could hypothetically take this down to any process that you want. It's sub-processes, microprocesses, microprocesses. That's probably a thing, I don't even know. But you can take that down to absolutely any level you want. But where you realistically want to start is here. You want an architectural diagram of what you're looking at. Now, a lot of you have all right, I can draw my thing, but then what do I do? Because I don't know security. I don't have a security department. My security person is a jerk that I don't want to talk to, whatever the case may be. A lot of us are jerks, I understand. So you're going to use something to try and figure out where the risks are. And this is the one Microsoft product that I endorse. This is my one product endorsement because it's free. I stole this picture from Google again. And this is a method called Stride. And using Stride, you can find 98% of all of the risks on the internet. There are only 6 types of internet security problems. You can see them there on the left. They are spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. Every single security problem boils down into a type, and it is one of those 6. The benefit of this particular process is that it tells you where those can occur. So if we take spoofing, for example, it is only possible that spoofing can show up if you're looking at processes and interactors. That's the only place that spoofing will show up. So it's not relevant for you if you're looking at your architectural diagram over here to look at spoofing in a database, for example, unless the database is running as a process. So you take your Stride, you take your database, or you take your data flow, and you start drawing up the risks, and it's going to look something like this. On the very, very left, you're going to have the bad thing that you've discovered, and it's tampering, for example. We're just going to put it as tampering, and you can stick tampering in anywhere that's relevant for tampering to be. And the mitigation for tampering is SSL, for example. And when I say SSL, I actually mean TLS, but most people, they say SSL because TLS is, for whatever reason, weirdly unknown. Anyway, so you know that that's the mitigation for tampering. And the benefit here, and this is the true benefit, is that you don't have to know how the tampering attack is coming. Because from a development perspective, it's irrelevant. You're building the defense. The attack is always going to be coming, and it's going to be coming in some ridiculous creative way that you can't think of, that I can't think of, despite the fact that I've been doing this for a zillion years. But the mitigation, the protection, the defense is always going to be SSL, TLS, or something else to prevent tampering from happening. So then you have your dev task. You have to implement the SSL, TLS. You have to make sure that it's actually a version that's realistic. You have to make sure that the version between the back end and the front end is the same. You have to make sure that you don't allow HTTP to be posted to an HTTPS stream. There are a bunch of things that you as a developer have to be able to do. And then you're going to toss that over to your testing department, who's going to check to make sure that you didn't screw up. It's true. And so this is a way to give you a structured way to look at things that could go wrong and what you're going to do about them without having to sit and think, how would an attacker possibly do this? How could I possibly, whatever the case may be? This will give you the threat, and it'll give you the mitigation. Now, this is going to be a potentially gigantic list because your architecture is probably complex. I have done these where I've come out with 250 points, and running to your boss with, I need 250 things done, is probably not going to be a good thing to do. So we're going to talk about how to rank these in just a little bit. But the idea is that this list can be very, very, very long, and it should be very, very, very long, because when the bad things happen, you can go to your boss and say, I knew about it, and you chose not to fix it. But I told you, it's right here in this list. You signed off saying, I know, but we can't fix that. So you've kind of got your rump, so to speak, your butt covered. I don't know what the colloquialism is. I want us all to look at that one at the very, very bottom, the 0-day horror. And this is the one that Stride covers 98% of all the risks on the internet. There are the 2% that, unfortunately, we will never be able to defend from. And there are the 0-day and the stroke of genius. A threat that is so new, a technique that is so new, something that's just once in a gabillion years, could this possibly be, a thing that we can't do anything about it. And when that happens, I hope to God that you have a good disaster recovery process in place that not only exists and is up to date, but that everyone knows what they should do. That the developers or your DevOps, when they're trying to get your systems back up, that they know in what order that should be done, so that they don't put up, a front end with no back end to support it, or a back end with nothing to talk to, a mobile app with nothing to talk to, whatever the case may be, that it's done in a structured order. Key things here, everyone has to know it exists. 2, they have to know what they personally are supposed to do. There's a great comic that I unfortunately could not find where the boss is saying, but the disaster recovery program just says we all run around going, what do we do? What do we do? And that's generally the state of affairs, that most people, the disaster recovery plan just kind of lays there and gathers dust and no one loves on it. And so when the bad thing happens, everyone runs around going, oh God, we're all going to die. And then the security department gets blamed, and then I have a really bad day. So when you're doing these, always have the 0-day horror at the bottom or at the top, wherever you feel like they should be, so that you really point out that I can't defend against everything, and so we need to defend against things that we don't know about. What are we going to do? What is our plan? You need a plan. And this is what you will hear every single time. I've been doing this forever, and I hear this all of the time. I am fairly well known. I have a big fancy title. I'm the head of a department, and I still hear this. I've been hearing it since I started. All of my friends in security hear this. The Equifax came out, and I swear to God, that boss, the day before it happened, had been like, that is never going to happen. I swear to you. I swear to God. And when that happens, I want you to think about this man, because I do. And I think about this man, and I think, thank God I don't have to defend about planes. Because Jesus Christ, what a hero to convince his boss that they're coming for us with a plane. And that really helps me on days when I'm struggling and when I'm just like, I am going to help me. So I think about this man. So find someone that can kind of inspire you to get over that hump, because this sentence is never, ever going away. No matter how good your information is, this sentence is never, ever, ever going away. And that's because people think it's never going to happen. And this is interesting because when we drive cars, we put seatbelts on. Everyone drives, and they put a seatbelt on. I have never met a person that gets in their car and says, I am going to crash today. But everyone puts their seatbelt on. And I think about that a lot when I'm looking at him and I put on my seatbelt, and I'm thinking that there was some security person that figured that shit out. So don't give up. And now, the nitty-gritty developer part. I'm actually secretly talking about validation. Oh no! And it's because if you actually do this, you're actually going to make a difference. You're actually getting rid of security problems. I know it's a boring problem, so I'm trying to spruce this up a little bit, because I know validation is unsexy. So just bear with me. Now, validation, I'm assuming everyone in here knows, but we're basically checking to make sure that what is sent in is actually what we're expecting. What is sent out is actually what we're expecting. That's it. That is validation. We can talk about the difference between validation and sanitation, but that is a talk for somebody else to have. I'm not having that one. The reason why we want to do this is there's about 5 different attacks that validation can solve for. Now, this does not mean that if you validate all of your inputs, cross-site scripting will go away and you will never have to worry about that. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. However, we're trying to defend against a script kiddie, low-hanging fruit here. If a super hacker's coming for you, it's been nice knowing you're done. You're done. But if you can make my life so ungodfully difficult that I can't get a cross-site scripting to work, in all likelihood, I'm going to swim away and go attack someone else. So you're not trying to kill, hacker man. You're just trying to irritate me to the point that I go somewhere else and attack someone with, less validation. And this can seem like kind of an unhuman response that, you're whacking on the lesser person. And I realize that's not a great message to be sending, but unfortunately that's true. Same thing with injection attacks, same thing with tampering attacks, denial of service attacks, configuration attacks. All of these can be markedly improved if you improve your validation. And I mean that going from the front end to the back end and from the back end coming up. A lot of the times we trust our back end implicitly. And so when the back end has, I'm apparently speaking to a lot of back end developers, a bad day, and it can happen, the front end goes absolutely nuts. So we need to work on defense in depth. We have to have embedded defense. You can't have your entire defense being built on one component, because that's a single point of failure, and that's no good. So you can do validation in a bunch of different ways. My personal favorite, and the one that is most secure, is whitelisting. You should always be able to guess to a reasonable degree of certainty what you're getting in and what you're getting out. There's always the argument of yes, but, and I hear yes, but you can make a whitelist that's flexible. You can make a whitelist that's easy to configure, and you can draw statistics of what you're rejecting and add to the whitelist as you go. I'm going to give it 10 more minutes process to maintain, but if it's 10 minutes and you're rejecting a significant number of attacks, I would argue that the 10 minutes is worth it. You can do this with boundary checking. My mom is a great example. She'll put in a zillion characters in the name field, and if the name field accepts a zillion characters and the web server dies, my mom is not a genius hacker. The validation is the problem. You can do this with character escaping. You can do this with null bytes. There are so many attacks just because we don't check to make sure that we don't accept null bytes, null characters, anything that just accepts a drop. We don't check for them because that would never happen. And it's a boring, boring thing to check for. UTF-8 is probably one of the more common ones, especially as our world becomes more global and our browsers become more advanced. Firefox and Chrome and Internet Explorer now take and interpret things and twist them around so our whitelist doesn't work. So even though whitelisting is a great defense, you have to take UT8 and the browser into account. So if I could just marry those two into some sort of great concept that covers both, I haven't been able to figure out how to do that. So if someone's smarter than me, definitely let me know how to do that. Don't trust your sources. And this is a lot of, thankfully, back-end stuff. Cross-system consistency checks. If you have 3 databases, they all feed the same information, make sure that's consistent. This is especially true if you're looking at authentication schemes and you have a round-robin system. You log into one server, you log out of the other server, and according to session or server A, you're still logged in. Server C says you're logged out. There needs to be cross-system consistency. Check your hashes to make sure the hashes are actually correct and make sure the hashes actually are what you're expecting. And I want to talk a little bit about keys. We're gonna skip right over referential integrity, but create keys. When we're looking at keys, make sure they're actually unique and make sure the keys actually exist, which seems like an absurd statement. I can see on some of your faces like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I wouldn't have it in this slide if it wasn't a real thing. People assume that I've gotten a key, the key must be right, I won't check. I won't even check that the key exists. And for whatever reason, it's a real thing because that would never happen. Finally, we have post-validation. I really did seriously go hardcore for this validation on this talk. After you validate, there are 3 things that need to happen, or one of 3 things that needs to happen. And enforcement is you have to, the user has sent in content that you're expecting, and you can either enforce telling the user that no, that was wrong, try again. And that's if you have a lot of interactive usage. Try again, do it again, I'm rejecting you. Don't tell them, you can't have S in our system because that's helping me. But tell them that their content was wrong and force them to do it again. You can have an advisory action, which is, I know that what you did was wrong, and I'm saving it in a sandboxed spot in my server, but I'm not going to reject you. And you can have verification actions. And you can see this a lot in billing. You take in information from the user and then you present it back to them. Is your name really Siren Hofvander? Do you really work, do you really work at this place? Do you really live in Sweden? And make me look at it one more time. And these 3 can come up and you're going to argue with design because they're going to say it's bad. It's bad UX, it's bad UI. Don't do that because I have designed a beautiful system that doesn't take into account whatever the case may be. And again, 10-minute conversation, it's not a plane, and you're getting rid of 98%. I don't know, I'm going to think of a giant number just to sound impressive, but a large number of security attacks. And I would argue that that conversation is at least worth having. Just have the conversation. If you lose the battle, for God's sake, don't lose the war, but have the conversation. Because it could be that design comes back and says, oh, that's a good point. I can add that, no problem. No problem. But if you're not brave enough to have the conversation, then you're stuck with the back end that looks like a ruin. Some standards, as I promised. The first one is the most important. This is my very, very, very favorite standard. It is the keep it simple, stupid standard. Don't over-design. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It makes my job harder. It makes everything harder. Just keep it simple, stupid. Please. If I could add a P, but kisp doesn't sound as good as kiss, so keep it simple, stupid. The simpler, the better. The simpler, the better. The simpler, the better. I look at a lot of systems. I look at a lot of architectural drawings, and 100% of the time, the more complex the system, the harder it is to defend, the more likely it is to attack, the more likely it will be attacked, because I, as the attacker, know that the developers are going to be underfunded and, frankly, just have a million things to do, and security isn't highest on anybody's priority, despite the fact that every single company has some sort of, we take security very seriously, we have a risk-designed approach, blah, 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 blah. But you ask their developers and they're like, yeah, sure, we do that. Yep, and then they leave. And then they just kind of avoid me. And then they're just like, yeah. But ironically, everyone knows what I do, but they'll slam their computers shut when I show up. But yeah, security is a top priority that's done by, yeah. So yeah, keep it simple. ASVS and MASVS, there are a bunch of assurance models. These are my two favorites. They are lists of security tests that you can do to make sure you're not screwing it up. They are produced by OWASP. They are designed to be automated security tests, and they are brilliant because they are described, they are documented, and they have already built into them the business case that you can present to your boss. You can literally copy-paste the preamble, give it to your boss and say, here is the statistic amount of work that needs to be done, and here is the benefit. I've copy-pasted this. Don't say that. And then when he says, all right, what are the tests? You're going to like, I got you. I've already made this list. And he's going to be like, wow, that's super impressive. You should get a raise. Yeah. ASVS, MASVS, super documented. MASVS is on GitHub. There's already code. You can literally just fork it. Done. Makes you look good. OWASP, I've talked a little bit about them. It's Open Web Application Security Project. I'm part of them. I'm one of their moderators. This is totally a plug for OWASP. And the reason I'm plugging OWASP is that we make a point of trying to invite more people into security. So we have best practice guides, we have checklists, we have forums. So you can come to us and you can ask us for help, and it's free. If you're talking to me, then I will try and be nice. But you can literally be like, how do I do this in this particular language? And I can nearly guarantee that we have a checklist, we have a coding best practice, we have something that can help you. You just have to reach out. SANS does the same thing. SANS releases OWASP and SANS release top 10 risks every single year. So they do a statistical analysis of the attacks going on the internet. And they release, these are the top 10 things that websites, that mobile sites are actually looking at right now that can make you have a bad day. Look at those lists because they actually have numbers that you can present to your boss and say, if we do these 3 things, statistically, we will be making a marked difference. This will actually help us. CVSS is a global database of all the attacks, and it gives them a score. It has a little calculator that you can actually put in a risk and say it's this difficult, it affects these components, it's on the network, it's physical, whatever, and it'll actually calculate the risk for you based on its databases of risks. So you don't even have to do any thinking because CVSS will do it for you. And then it will present you best practices, it will present you test cases, it will present you best standards. It will also help you. So take a picture of this slide, it's a good one. But the most important one is keep it simple, stupid. Finally, start small. And I know this is really hard, especially if you're looking at that ruinous back end of my slide a few slides ago. It's really hard, especially if you're like, I have validated one input. One. And you feel like that doesn't make a difference. And one input field probably doesn't. But Rome was not built in one day. And someone had to lay the first brick. And the person that lays the first brick, the next brick is going to be in line with that brick. And then it's going to be oh shit, the camera's going to be mad. Here we go. The next, they line up. Yeah, I have to, the camera, they said no running around. He did. So, sorry, camera. So if you're the person, you're like, I'm making a validation schema. Unless you work with a bunch of jerks, it's pretty likely that the next person is going to be like, all right, if you've invested that time, I guess I'll validate my input. Next person's going to be like, oh, well, fine. Well, now there's 2 people. Fine. I'm just going to validate my input. Fine. Then you're going to hire someone, and the person's going to be like, all right, well, we validate our inputs. I'm just going to validate my input. I'm fine. In 6 months, all of your inputs are validated. But if you're thinking about that first day and you've only done 1, that can be really, really difficult. So just don't think in terms of I have to solve everything today. Think I have to solve everything in 6 months, and the way I'm going to get here is putting down that very first brick. And that has to be you. So this is my very last slide. I am not a developer. I work with a team of absolutely brilliant developers. I've been doing security for a long time. I can't develop. I can read code. I can code review, but I cannot develop. And so I have had the great fortune to be surrounded by developers in both forums and conferences that have helped me to build all the tools and have just helped me to do the things that I cannot do. So a heartfelt thank you from me to you, because I could not possibly do this job without you. And security gets a lot of credit for defense, and I would argue that the developer should get just as much credit, if not more, because I am one person, I am one function. And just like in code, I can't work by myself. So from me to you, thank you very much.